with the Midwest Food Processors Association. We represent food processors from Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois. We used to be the Wisconsin Canning and Freezing Association. I'm here today to ask you to support one of our issues that's been around since 2003. It's called FarmFlex, and what FarmFlex does is it eliminates the growing restrictions on fruits and vegetables in the current Farm Bill. And we've been working on this issue for quite a while. There's a bill in right now introduced by Senator Lugar, Senate Bill 1188. Senator Lugar, By, Durbin, Levine, and Stabenow are all supporting it. We'd love to have a Wisconsin senator on this bill.
And what's the main point of the bill?
What it does is it eliminates the current growing restrictions on fruits and vegetables, which was put into the 2002 Farm Bill. Currently, if a farmer grows program crops, soybeans or corn, for grain, they cannot opt out of those programs to grow fruits and vegetables. Now, without incurring a penalty and losing their base acres. Okay. Now, Wisconsin is the third largest processing state in the nation. Only California and Minnesota process more fruits and vegetables than we do, and so it's a big deal. Our members contract with probably over 2,000 farmers here in the state of Wisconsin to can and freeze corn, green beans, peas, that sort of thing. We're the #1 processor of green beans, and for those of you who don't like green beans, we're sorry about that, but I don't know.
Well, I've seen the green beans being processed in Cumberland, Wisconsin.
Darn right.
I think just about every green bean in the world is processed there. It's quite an impressive thing. You know, I could have sworn that I was involved with this.
You were on this bill last session.
Well, that's what I thought.
Yes,
I remember reading the memo about Senator Lugar's bill. Well, yeah. I assume we're still supportive of it, so I will double check, but my guess is we're probably going to be with you again.
We'd love to see that.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
Congressman.
Just walking out the door. We got a set of keys on the floor.
I'm a farmer a long time ago. I wrote the fertilizer law and I wrote the feed law with the state. Now, we're talking about corn and beans.
What's your name, sir?
I'm Henry Grundle.
You're going next, Henry. Can you let this man finish? You're next.
All right, I'll sit
Actually, you're after Denny Blackmore.
I'll wait.
You want to wait? All right, let this man finish, then you're going, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're probably with you on this thing. I remember the issue. I remember Senator Lugar's leadership on it.
Another thing that, just two other real quick issues. We're also running into some problems. A lot of the new spending that's going on in the current Farm Bill promotes a lot of spending for fresh fruits and vegetables. Our position is there's no difference between fresh and processed. There shouldn't be in government programs. So we ask you to just simply not promote fresh over processed.
All right, well, let me take a look at that issue. And Henry, you're next. Now, this will not work for anyone else standing up, just so you know. I've known Henry for 25 years, and I've known some of the rest of you that long, but we're just going to let Henry do it.
Interrupted you.
Go ahead, Henry.
I couldn't let this go on any longer without telling
You go ahead, Henry.
what I know about the Farm Bill. And it always has helped the Farm Bill as it is today. And the reason we got the Farm Bill is because we always had excess food, excess products of corn and beans. And this is what has created the Farm Bill. Now, as we see it today, with the production of ethanol to put into our fancy cars rather than feed people throughout the world, we got excess products of alcohol, and we got a big price for corn and a big price for beans. And you get to this summer, or when you're putting in your corn for next year, you're pricing it on the Board of Trade, and you're looking at corn next year for future product. You can put this corn in the billing process for 08 in April of next year. Same thing with beans, same thing with cotton, same thing with wheat. And the wheat price is just about $9 a bushel. Think of what's that going to do to a piece of bread flour. But anyway, the other thing I want to say is that we're talking about Social Security, aren't we? Mr. Feingold, we're talking about Social Security. Everybody in here is going to be, and I'll be 80 years old in 3 weeks.
Congratulations.
Well, I don't worry about that. I just had a back operation, so I'm laid up for about 3-4 more months. But the best way to take care of this Social Security is to raise the income that they pay on Social Security to $200,000. And they can sign a pledge that they're going to be out of it.
All right, Henry, I'm going to have you conclude so everybody else can talk, but let me just tell you, I totally agree with what you just said.
But
I find everywhere in this state that people do want to raise that FICA level, but that's the easiest sell in terms of things we need to do in Social Security, so I think you're right about that.
But one thing I want to say before I get done.
And that's it. We got all these nice people want to talk to.
Yeah, okay, but
One more quick comment.
I want to tell you, you bet if you're going to go into this thing and not indict Bush and Cheney and Roe, because they're going to take off for Paraguay, where that's the fact.
If they don't invade it first, right?
Yeah. They got 900,000 acres of farmland bought down in Paraguay.
All right, fair warning, my friend. It's good to see you again. And now we're going to, thank you. No, you don't have to leave. Danny, thank you for your patience and waiting. You're next. Now Ed Irwin after you. Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon, Mr. Senator Feingold and Katie. I don't represent a constituency, but I fear that I do represent a truth. And that truth has nothing to do with specific legislation. But I have been responding to all those who've written to me and mailed me mailings for contributions. I've written on that form. I have 5 words for you. Effective campaign finance reform now. I believe that lack of finance reform, election finance reform, has literally been the plug which has kept all the other issues from really being aired. And so I think it has created governmental gridlock, and I just don't see anything effectively happening below some of the other non-policy levels, of which I feel as if I'm speaking to the choir here, because I certainly have no complaints about your work. But I think, do you have a response to that particular comment?
I of course agree with you that this is at the foundation of almost everything else. I think it's easy to be a little more discouraged than you need to be, though, because remember that the Contract with America people were in charge for 12 years. And even in that context, Senator McCain and I were able to pass a ban on party soft money, which is 100% effective. It's no longer possible for members of Congress to raise those contributions or to be involved in it. We did that under a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House. Can you imagine what we could do now with a Democratic majority that builds a coalition for public financing, voluntary public financing of campaigns? You know, we had a successful system of presidential public financing for some 30 or 40 years. It has fallen into disrepair. But I have introduced a bill that would bring it back up to date. We've never had it for congressional reasons.
One point I forgot to make. I talked with Al Franken's office a couple of months ago, and they're saying that he has to spend probably 40% of his time on the phone just negotiating for money.
I'm sure
and
that
just seems like a disservice.
Public financing would really help get around that. Thank you for your comment, and we do have a number of bills that move in this direction that I'd like you to send Denny a copy of the bills that you could help us organize around. Ed Irwin, followed by Ed Schaller.
Hello, thank you, Senator. I'm going to be kind of informational rather than coming up with specific work for you. I'm going to be talking about mental illness and mental health and hope. And hope is what is needed to take a seed and help it grow. An example of this is John Beard, who's a hero of mine, and I can't say enough of him because I don't have any time. But he wanted to make the world a better place than it was when he left it, than he entered it. He invented something called transitional employment, which is a way for people with mental illness to open the door to their own jobs. through his creativity and innovative work, thousands of jobs for people who wanted to become taxpayers and leave behind a life of being a tax taker were invented. You and social workers in mental health care share the same goal, putting people in the mainstream economy to improve their lives and decrease their dependence. You go back to high school psychology and Maslow's hierarchy. As people with mental illness come farther and farther in improving their lives, they become more organized and connected to their world. This is kind of a revolution, and I assure you it happens a lot. I was told by someone who was helping me find work that I'm a pioneer. What he means by that is I've taken a very tenuous path and eventually moved through a rite of passage. A few weeks ago, I got my master's degree in social work. I can help people, having been through that path, I can help people move further on. And this will actually save money for the federal government. Again, people working, not on the dole. I can tell you there is no place lonelier than psychosis. And I hope to see that change. I look forward to the day when someone walks down the street and they don't look like no one cared about them. And maybe they're speaking to some voices, but they don't have to be ashamed of that. They're viewed as a respected member of the community for their contributions, which are many. That would be a world where hope flows like a river. I've been told, and I believe, when someone sees even one person with a mental illness doing well, they see through the stigma for the rest of their lives. I'm up. Okay, just a second here. One last thing. The president vetoed parity for mental health care and medical bills for children last Wednesday. I'd like to see that in force as well as an adult.
Ed, thank you. Just an eloquent statement, and you're a great example of somebody who just communicated, hopefully with a lot of people, exactly what needs to be communicated about mental illness. We do have a chance to pass mental health parity. Best chance we've had in a long time. We've had a majority in the Senate for some time. We think we have a good chance in the House. This is very long overdue, and I really think your eloquent statement helps move us in that direction. And I do hope that we will have a chance to override the president on this children's health bill, which was really a very unfortunate veto. I don't know if we can get the votes, but I'm somewhat optimistic. Congressman Petri of Wisconsin has decided to vote to override. So we need a few more Republicans to do that. This is not a partisan issue. There are Republicans that were with us on this from the beginning. It is, both for the reasons you mentioned and for the general reasons of children's health care, it's very, very important. Ed Scheller, followed by Michael Norris.
I'd like to make sure that no money from Washington comes to Madison and or Dane County for regional railroad transportation until it is more thoroughly studied by all the residents of Dane County, not just Madison and Middleton. If we have extra money for rail, I would like to see long-range rail between the city of Madison and Milwaukee. I think it would be an improvement to the whole southern part of Wisconsin. Regarding the locks and dams on the Mississippi River, they do need repair. I think some legislation just went through that they are going to work on 5 of them, but I do not believe that the dams that that the locks that we have now have to be lengthened. They've been splitting their toes going through there for 30 years. If we lengthen the locks now, they'll be back in another 20 years and wanting the length lengthened again. Let them live with the size docks that we have now.
All right, let me get some background on that. That's an interesting point that I wasn't completely aware of.
And also, I believe our need for the exports down the Mississippi is going to be decreasing with our better utilization of corn, soybeans here to feed our increasing population, legal or illegal, and also the fact that we are hopefully going to use more of it to produce our own fuel, which will not come from a foreign country. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have Michael Norris, followed by Will Williams. I'm going to ask people to move that light because I'd like to see my constituents. It is a listening. It is a listening session, but it's also a visual experience for me. Could you just turn the light a little bit, please?
Is that better?
Much better.
Okay.
I can see people. Yes, sir, followed by Will Williams.
Like you, Senator, I'm really here to listen, and I feel somewhat outnumbered because I don't represent anybody except a private citizen. And I am interested in politics, and as you can tell from my accent, I'm not exactly American-born, but I've been over here now.
You're from Black Earth?
I've been over here for 12 years, and I am a legal immigrant, just in case anybody's got the wrong idea. I have come to listen, really, to hear what everybody sitting around here is thinking about, worried about, concerned about. I'm also here to listen to hear what's happening in Washington, Senator. And there are two issues that I'm particularly interested in. One is the balance between state security, federal security, personal security, and personal freedom. Because it seems to me that some of the steps being taken over the last few years have been very dangerous from the point of view of private personal freedom. And I don't like, for instance, the wiretapping activities that have been going on. I'm not sure that I agree with the suspension of habeas corpus in Guantanamo, and there are lots of other issues. And I would be interested to know some of the background of Washington thinking on these issues. My other question is the question of immigration. The Wisconsin Academy of Science has had a very interesting series recently about immigration. And it seems to me that there is a supply and demand problem here about the immigrant skill. There is a requirement for immigrants. I received a green card when I came over here. Is there some blue card, for instance, that you could give immigrants which would make sense? Because at the present, putting up a wall between us and America and Mexico doesn't seem to make any sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. The second one I'll have to give some thought to, some kind of an alternative like that. But on the civil liberties and habeas corpus, I think the word Washington thinking is sort of giving it more credit than it deserves. Because, you know, on many issues, people are very thoughtful, and they're very bright people. But on this issue, when it comes to shove on something like the obvious, such as not doing torture or preserving the writ of habeas corpus, or not wiretapping Americans without a warrant. On these things, there isn't thinking. There's, frankly, the willingness of too many Democrats to be afraid and run away whenever George Bush and Dick Cheney say, you know, you're going to be responsible for the next terrorist attack. You know, none of us would do anything that would compromise the security of the American people. All the protections that we wanted on torture or habeas corpus or wiretapping simply had to do with making sure that innocent people are not sucked into the web of this.
It's a fear, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's fear, and it is effective, and it is purposely pushed up against a recess so people feel like if they delay things that they will be accused of, and they heighten the warnings about possible terrorist attacks. I won't say whether I think it's justified or not, but it is a horrible spectacle.
Yeah.
And it is a real, it will go down as one of the real moments of shame in the history of our government. People will be writing about this 100 years from now, this cowardice that has occurred with regard to not standing up for the Constitution. Will Williams, followed by Roy Thompson.
Where did I come from?
I'm sorry. No, I said next. You're next. I've called the next person. Will Williams.
Yes. I lived in Hayward before I came down here.
All right. Did I say his name again?
No, you asked him, are you from Cross Plains?
Oh. Can the next person come up now?
Sorry, I'm kind
of... the next person should come up now.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much, sir. Will, and then Roy Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Feingold. My issue is the same as it has been ever since I've been following you around the state, seemed like forever. And you mentioned it first, No Child Left Behind. I think that was the first thing you talked about. Then Mr. Quick talked about it. But no one has talked about Section 9528, which is part of that No Child Left Behind, the part that mandates the schools give the data from the students to military recruiters. It's not mentioned here. It's not mentioned in D.C. Matter of fact, I got a call from Senator Cole's office, I think it was Monday, where I had mentioned it to him. He spoke with Senator Kennedy, who's on the Education Committee, and what I was told by Senator Cole's staff was that Senator Kennedy said they would not touch it because they couldn't get it through pass because of the recruitment. Our gripe is not that we are anti-recruitment, but we are tired of the misconceptions that the recruiters are doing to our young people. We're tired of how the schools seem to be afraid to challenge the military recruiters because of the pressure from the government. It's not a political thing. It's not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's the safety of our children that we're thinking about. We know that there is a military-industrial complex, and we feel that education have been brought into it. We're tired of seeing young people go and be misled in believing that they're doing the right thing when in reality they're being led down an endless tunnel of destruction.
Well, this is
the latest death was a young lady in 2001, Rachel Hugo. Now, the latest thing we're raising sand about is recently the Madison School Board passed a resolution or gave authority to the military to run advertisement on the scoreboard clocks in the gyms and at the football games, even though it's in their own policy that information pertaining to military recruitment would be within the guidance counselor's office. They're still doing this. And when you complain in Washington like Senator Kennedy did, he said it's a state's issue. When you complain here in the state, they say it's a federal issue. So my question to you, since No Child Left Behind was written by the Pentagon in Department of Defense in 2002, and they put that section in there that the schools must give this information to the recruiters or lose funding. Is it a state problem or is it
all right, well,
federal problem?
I think
and
that's
should the ball be kicked around at the expense of young people's lives?
That's a fair question because it is a federal provision that you're citing. I'm going to take a good look at this thing because that does worry me. I hear this combined with these bonuses that are being offered for people to sign up, and I want recruiting to work, but at what point do you enter a mercenary kind of situation? At what point do you put an idea in a kid's head who really doesn't want to do this? It worries me. So I will give a fresh look at this. I understand that Senator Kennedy may have some reasons why he doesn't think it should be pursued, but others of us, I mean, he's also a supporter of No Child Left Behind, and it's more or less in its current form. So I agree with Senator Kennedy a lot. Some people say I agree with him too much, but on this one we do have differences. So I will pursue this, and I do want to get back to Will on this. It does trouble me. You bet. Roy Thompson. Can you read that? Is there a name on it? Oh, he's up there. Henry already spoke. That's his.
Oh, that's him.
Yeah. All right, Roy Thompson, followed by Hollis Thompson.
Well, thanks for coming down to see us, Senator. We really appreciate the work you're doing for us in Washington. The Democrats took control of both houses of Congress in January, and congratulations on that. Since then, we've lost 870 more American lives in Iraq. We have more American forces on the ground in Iraq than we did back then in January. It seems nothing has changed. The president still gets everything he wants. There's not been a single budget resolution rejected that he's asked for. We still have the habeas corpus problem. Recently, I saw where a man who was tortured by the government, and we are doing torture, I'm convinced of that, a man who was tortured by the government sued, and the judge threw it out saying it would expose state secrets. There seems to be no recourse for people that are violated by this government. And like some other people here, I've lost a lot of confidence in both parties in Washington. I think that there's a game going on up there that doesn't include us. And again, thank you for coming, Senator.
Well, I don't know how anybody could be more accurate than that statement, sadly. The way I try to respond is to say, on the domestic side, I don't feel the Democratic majority is doing so poorly at all, that we have passed the first minimum wage increase in 10 years. We did get a pay-go rule in place that requires that all spending or tax cuts are paid for the first time in many years. We passed the strongest lobbying and ethics reform bill in 30 or 40 years. So some positive things have happened. But on the international front, with regard to Iraq and with regard to civil liberties, it has been a very dismal performance. And I feel exactly the same way you do. I'm disheartened. I had to stand there alone in my caucus and argue against this wiretapping thing, and ultimately persuaded the chairman of the key committees, Chairman Rockefeller of Intelligence, Chairman Levin of Armed Services, Chairman Leahy of Judiciary. They all stood with me to come up with an alternative that would protect the communications of innocent people in the United States who might be brought into this web of these foreign communications. But 16 Democratic senators, including a number who just got elected because of these issues, voted with the Republicans. And that was disheartening. And some of them have heard about it and regret it. But now let's see what happens when we face this issue, because it has a 6-month sunset on it. Let's see if they stand up or just tell me again that they regret it. That's not good enough. Hollis Thompson, followed by Lou Stolzenberg.
I think we could do something about Social Security by putting the FICA all the way up to the last $100 million you make, and maybe even increasing the rate after $1 million. I wonder, I see the president is claiming credit from the tax cuts that were implemented by the Republicans for the creation of 110,000 new jobs last month, which seems to be about the standard number that we're creating with our economy. But I understand also that it takes about 180 to meet the needs of new entrants into the job market. And I'm wondering, are we accruing a substantial deficit of jobs in this country, and what can be done about it?
Well, I think we are. I think we've lost, obviously, an enormous amount of skilled jobs overseas with these, I think, unbalanced trade agreements. We have lost a tremendous amount of our capacity to provide the kind of jobs that people have learned to have to support their family. And people are being pushed into jobs that don't have health care or other jobs that don't involve the kind of skills that they've had in the past. So I think one of the ways to get around it is to prevent these unbalanced trade agreements from being passed. And that is something that we're actually getting closer to getting a majority on than we have in the past, because this impact has occurred in places like Alabama and Georgia. So you have Republican senators who have never voted with us on things like NAFTA, who are now voting with us against CAFTA, the Central American Free Trade Agreement. We only lost 54-46 on that. So I think there is a way to have a more rational, I am for appropriate trade agreements. The idea of not having trade and just using tariffs to me is just not going to work. But fair and balanced trade agreements is something that we can demand, and I think that would make a difference.
Thanks for your hard and excellent work.
Thank you. Lou Stolzenberg, followed by Gay Haller.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for all your good work. It's nice to know that somebody in Washington has some good common sense on a lot of issues. I'm concerned about the dubious explanation the government has provided for 9/11. Considering the questions, rejections, and increased evidence for alternate explanations that have emerged from accredited professionals in architecture, engineering, science, aviation, intelligence, the military, and other disciplines, and also considering the exhaustive documentation of the many omissions and distortions in the 9/11 Commission report as reported by scholars, would you work for a new, truly independent 9/11 investigation to uncover the full truth and specifically the technical truth of what caused the unprecedented event of 3 World Trade Center buildings to collapse, as there is massive evidence that controlled demolition was the most probable cause for these collapses according to scientific principles? I think it's reasonable to expect an explanation that's consistent with evidence and science which the government explanation is not. I thank you for listening, and I'd like to leave some information for you and your staff to look at, some statements from scientists, engineers, and pilots.
I certainly will look at the material. I am skeptical. I don't think 9/11 was an inside job. There is a guy still running loose in Pakistan and Afghanistan who has claimed credit, who I don't think was coordinating with George Bush. But, you know, I owe it to you to look at whatever else you have. I just find that to be something I find hard to believe.
I do not want to believe it, and I've spent about a year looking at it. It troubles me that the 9/11 Commission did not include the hundreds of reports of explosions that firefighters, that World Trade Center workers reported before the planes hit and after the planes hit.
So is it your view that al-Qaeda was not involved?
Pardon me?
Is it your view that al-Qaeda was not involved?
Yes, that is my view. I have learned things about al-Qaeda that's connected to U.S. intelligence agencies.
Make sure we get the material, and I thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Gay Haller, followed by Tom Brown.
Senator Feingold, I'd like to tell you how proud I am to have you as my senator.
Thank you.
I've traveled outside of this state, and I'm always proud to tell people who represents me. As one of the few that has the guts to stand up to the things that are going on right now in Washington. My question to you is simple. Who do you expect me and a lot of other people to vote for when we all thought we did what we were supposed to do? We were supposed to, you know, throw the Republicans out. We were supposed to put the Democrats in because they promised us they were going to take care of business in Washington. And while I do believe you are attempting to do that, I do realize it's hard for one person to make that big a difference. I would like you to go to Washington and tell them that we're going to throw the rest of the bums out, too. We've had it. You know, tell me who to vote for in this presidential election. Tell me. Because you know what? I don't believe the Democrats anymore either. I mean, what am I going to do? Do I sit out the election? Is that what it's coming down to?
No, I hope you won't do that, but I certainly understand what you're saying, because I do go back there every week, and I do end up in meetings where I'm hearing people say, well, you know what people are saying in Bismarck and what people are saying in Little Rock, which are important places. They are. But I say, but you know, there's other parts of the country too. And in my area, I said, not just in Madison, but all over the state of Wisconsin, you cannot take for granted the base of the Democratic Party, and not just the Democratic Party, independents, progressives, who are so disheartened that people don't have the guts to vote to truly end this war, among other things. So, you know, they're playing with fire, and I do warn them.
Good.
And I think they do understand the warnings are real, because they have seen in the past what some of these issues have gotten them into. It's kind of this bizarre situation where they got the majority and they got the power because of this disaster of the Iraq War, which many of them voted for. And now they're going, hey, we're in the majority, but, you know, why are they in the majority? So I'm not going to endorse for president here, although this would be a fine place. I am struggling between my feelings about Hillary Clinton and Senator Obama. I'm trying to figure out where to go between the two. If somebody's thumbs down, I don't even know who that's for. Who's the thumbs for? Both of them? Kucinich crowd. I had a feeling I'd get some of that. Of course, Dennis and I agree on many things. I'm still thinking about it.
Just pass on to them that, you know what, people are pretty darn fed up back home.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind words. Tom Brown, followed by Elaine Wiedemann.
It's difficult to begin, Senator, without taking notice of your recent 97-1 vote in the Senate, once again reflecting a principled stand on where you are and what you believe in is the best course for our country and the welfare of the world. I thank you for that. I have concerns that many have not always been as clear about what they believed or what we believed, or that we expressed the belief just too late to be good for the welfare of all. My concern today has to do with the ethical, sloppy position of our recent Attorney General on what is legal, decent, fair, and ethical about American interrogation techniques in our current terrorist environment. My hope is that you will use your role on the Judiciary Committee in the upcoming confirmation hearings of a new Attorney General to help America clarify what it believes torture is, what it believes are ethical behaviors in interrogation, what it senses is the obligation of America to create a decent world in the face of such terror as we have. But can we be indecent in the way we try to create a decent world? Just what does the nominee believe in the face of the United Nations standards for human rights, the Geneva Conventions on War, the Declaration of Human Rights statements of what we wish the standard of behavior to be with our relationships one with another? And just what do these demands demand of us? Because we have seen evil in Somalia, Chechnya, or Kurdistan, in Syria, in Iran, in Turkey, doesn't mean that we are obligated to do the same thing, only more efficiently. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. I want to assure you that I'll use my time in questioning Mr. Mukasey, the nominee for Attorney General, to cover some of these issues. I'll also want to assure you that in my work on the Intelligence Committee, the Foreign Relations Committee, and the Judiciary Committee, some of it in public and some of it in private, I am challenging this torture thing down the line, which I believe to be what the publicly stated position is illegal, what they're trying to do. So I assure you, although some of it is not visible, that in some cases, I've been alone there too. But I think we have others who will be standing up on this issue. But it is very disheartening. Elaine Wiedemann, followed by Lee Brown.
Thank you, Senator, for inviting me. I'm very happy to be at this listening session and hear more about what more people are thinking right now. As I said on my note, I have more than one issue, but I won't make it long. I don't represent a constituency. I represent, I think, a whole group of retired clergy who spent a lot of time discussing issues international and national. One of my issues is voting machines and paper ballots. I know we have an election coming up soon, and I don't trust what happened the last time around, and neither do a lot of people. And I know there are bills there's one in the House and that is passed, and one in the Senate that's coming over. I personally believe that paper-based voting systems where you can check on voter fraud are the best. I think we have a pretty good system in Wisconsin. Is there a bill in the Senate that will improve things, and how's it going? That's my one question. Should I take them one at a time?
Ask one more, and then I'll have to move on.
Okay. Well, okay, one more is, what in the Senate is being done to deauthorize the resolution on the Iraq war?
Well, first of all, on the voting machines, there is the bill in the House by Congressman Rush Holt, and there have been bills in the Senate. I, of course, support them. We have 22 states where there's not even a paper trail requirement, although we have it here. Here's what I'm unhappy about, though. I'm told that in these committees now, they're going to wait till 2012.
Oh.
Not even 20. I think this is a real failure. Again, I hate to be so downbeat about some of this, but this is an area of failure because they think they can't get it done in time, and I think that's wrong. And I'm going to try to figure out a way, although I'm, again, just one person, to try to get us back on track, because I think you're right about that. There are proposals to try to deauthorize the war. I think Senator Clinton and Senator Byrd were trying to do that, but, you know, that isn't good enough because it's just a piece of paper. We need to cut off the funding for the war. That is the real.
I agree with that.
It would be nice to pass the deauthorization, but guess who wouldn't pay any attention to it?
Okay, that's probably true.
Stopping the funding is something that maybe these guys would be aware is a bit of a problem. Thanks. Lee Brown, followed by Rachel Thompson.
Thank you very much for being here again, and I'm so glad you're on both the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Judiciary Committee, because I see you trying to get America back on track in both instances. And in the Judiciary Committee now, you're going through a restore the U.S. Constitution idea, you know, about habeas corpus and so forth. But I wish you would also restore attention to Article 6, Paragraph 2, which says that the treaties shall be the law of the land. And under that, the United Nations Charter is actually the law of the land, which means it has as much weight as any other law, a federal law. And so many of our problems would evaporate if we had respected that. Like, the purpose of the United Nations was actually to end war, and it's sort of the mother of all treaties, how to get along with people. And the first thing was to save the future generations from the scourge of war. So if we were obeying that, we would be getting out of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we would stop funding them. To reaffirm faith and fundamental human rights, that's under the UN Charter, we should be closing Guantanamo. And to see that justice and respect for the obligations arising from treaties and other sources of international law, that would mean that we would be eliminating our nuclear weapons instead of talking about building them up. Because in 1970, we promised to start eliminating them. It's a few years after 1970. And then finally, to promote social progress and better standards of life in the world, then we would be working with the world community to establish emissions reductions agreements. So I just hope in the restoring the Constitution, restore Article 6, Paragraph 2.
All right, that's an interesting point. And, you know, I admire all the different advocacy you do. You were the one that had more to do with my trying to stop the abrogation of some of the treaties in the past that I think were illegally abrogated in the U.S. Senate. You were helpful with that as well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Trying to get Rachel Thompson and then Charity Hirsch. I'm trying to give everybody a chance to talk, so I'll try to limit my remarks a little bit.
First, I just wanted to make sure that you heard from someone firsthand that your staffer, Victoria in Middleton, was extremely helpful, and I really appreciated everything that she did while working on an issue for me.
Well, that's nice to hear.
So I wanted you to hear that firsthand.
I think she's here so she can hear it herself.
Oh, well, thank you, Victoria.
She's somewhere.
But really what I wanted to ask was, if the offenses of this administration aren't considered impeachable, I would like to know what is. And I don't think that the real issue of impeachment is whether it's successful or whether it's popular or whether it's time-consuming, but whether or not Congress represents us. And it's about our basic laws and whether they apply to just us or also to the most powerful members of society. And I guess the question is, does this country belong to us as Americans, or does it belong to the people with the most power?
Okay, well, that's very well said, and it is a difficult thing for me to answer because I do think this administration probably committed impeachable offenses, at least with regard to the warrantless wiretapping program. My response to this has been to be troubled by it and to say, let's figure out a way to, without trying to do a whole impeachment process, which, as you've indicated, may not succeed, is to have a censure resolution that would make it clear on the historical record that these things have been done and that they're wrong. That probably won't go through either. I'll tell you something, I'm happy that even though people have said I've introduced too many censure resolutions, you know, this hasn't happened since Andrew Jackson. And so it is part of history that people felt it was necessary to introduce resolutions of censure. It is part of the effort to bring accountability. I'm not sure it should be the only accountability, and I'm open on it, to other forms of accountability that have to happen, but to me it's at least a way to, and if you look at the censure resolutions, they're very precise. They say one is on Iraq, and one is on the rule of law, and they lay out very specifically where these acts were committed that I think were censurable, in some cases perhaps impeachable, and it can be a foundation for other efforts.
Thank you for all
You
you
bet.
do.
Charity Hirsch, followed by Robert Bernick.
Yeah, well, I essentially wanted to say the same thing. What's Nancy Pelosi getting off saying we can't impeach? I think that's something we should be looking at. Thanks a lot for doing it.
All right, thank you. Robert Bernig, followed by Jim Roch. Is Robert Bernig here? If not, we'll go to Jim, followed by Michelle Eldridge.
Good,
Jim?
Senator.
How you been?
Good, good, good. Greetings from Los Angeles. I'm here to visit my family. So I'm speaking to you father to father. You have 4 children and I have 4. The Senate of course, has you, which if you could be the president of California, you certainly would be welcome to that particular little job. But leaving that aside.
Better cheese here.
And Mike Farrell says sends his greetings also. So, but father to father, you have 4 children and I have 4. In the year 2009, 3 of those kids are going to be college age, 18 to 25. If that draft is reintroduced, they're all vulnerable, young men and young women. Congress continues to fund the war. The volunteer army is exhausted and Blackwater's been discredited. The wrong commander-in-chief in 2009 may reintroduce the military draft. I don't think it's beyond the pale of what could happen with this unending war and the quagmire that we're in over there. I don't know how to appeal to you other than say that I hope and I pray that nobody here will have to face that spectacle of having their children or grandchildren drafted. And it could happen because of those 3 things coming into confluence, I believe. So I'm just asking for your comments on that, sir.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm worried about it, too. I was pleased when we went to an all-volunteer army, but now I see that that's premised on intelligent foreign policy. And when you do horrible mistakes like Iraq and eviscerate your military, it puts the country in a vulnerable position where people may be calling. I think this war would have been over a long time ago, frankly, if we had the draft. You know, the sad thing is families can say, well, at least if my kid goes, it's his or her choice. But I'm not for reinstituting the draft. But we are heading potentially, as you described it, to a national security crisis that could lead to a real movement to do that. So we need to avert that by getting us orderly out of Iraq and redistribute our resources and do the things we need to do to strengthen our National Guard and others. But I am concerned about it.
Unfortunately, I don't see anybody on the national stage who is saying get them all out now for good. Nobody is saying that on either side. I've watched all the
My
debates.
bill says everybody is out except for, protecting a facility or very narrow things that do not involve military offensive activity by the end of next June. Michelle Eldridge, followed by Jane Cummings Carlson.
Hi, my name is Michelle Eldridge from the Madison Area Transgendered Association. With the recent going-ons in the House of Representatives with the Equal Employment Non-Discrimination Act, I know that it's not your House of Congress, but how much attention is being paid to it in the Senate and what your stance is on a fully inclusive Employment Non-Discrimination Act?
Well, I'm a strong supporter of it. I'm one of Senator Kennedy's co-sponsors. And there has been activity and discussion about it in the Senate recently. And I think our majority leader is trying to force a vote on it. So I strongly support it.
If it comes to the Senate, without the inclusive language, would there be any discussion as far as including
I don't
gender
know what would
identity
happen.
into-
I think the goal is to have it included when it comes in. But I do support you on this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Before Jane, is Jane next? Okay, Jane, you're going to be next, but first I'm going to let my friend, our sheriff here, Sheriff Mahoney, say hello. Good to see you, Sheriff.
Hello, Senator. Good to see you.
All right.
Good to see all of you as well. I'm out from Senator Feingold back to Green County. I'm glad to be here. Be with the Senator.
Thank you. I've been transferred from sheriff to sheriff today, from Crawford County to Grant County, Dane County, and so far I haven't been transferred anywhere I don't want to go. Thank you very much for being here. Jane, you're next, and then Diane Johnson.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm here today as a private citizen, very concerned about invasive species, in particular the ones that are threatening the health of our forests. And I know you have many, many issues that are very important, but I just wanted to raise the importance of this so that you are able to ponder it, so that when we need your help in fighting these organisms, you are aware. One in particular that's on our doorstep, just 35 miles south of our border, is the emerald ash borer. And we have about 279 million ash trees in our state. About 20% of our urban trees are ash. And all of us are going to have to be involved in managing just this one species. Everything from limiting the movement of infested firewood to setting municipal, state, and federal policy. So I greatly appreciate your involvement in any of these issues and assistance.
It's good to see you again, and
Thank
I
you.
will be sensitive to that. I've been very involved in invasive species issues having to do with our lakes and our waters, but this is also very important, and it has been brought up at some recent listening sessions, the ash borer issue. So thank you very much. Diane Johnson, followed by Harriet Gorski.
Hi, I had no idea when I filled out that sheet that I would have to get up here and speak.
You don't have to. It's if you want to.
But, no, but the issues that I had written down were answered and spoken about by other people, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm very proud to have you as my senator. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you spoke. Harriet Gorski, followed by Carrie. Was that first name?
Doe.
Doe, Carrie? Okay, you're going to be after Harriet. All right?
Yeah, thank you for your listening sessions and all the other good work that you do. Mine is truly a question. I'm representing myself and not any organization. But I am so concerned about what I hear about a possible military strike on Iran. And I wondered what you thought of the intelligence that they seem to base that on. And do you have any idea how the people who support that are imagining Iran would respond to that? Because that seemed to be a big problem in Iraq, you know, that they didn't think ahead. I'm wondering if they're thinking ahead this time.
Well, I have very little sympathy for the president of Iran and the statements he's made, but certainly the Iranian people might have reason to be nervous when they look to their left and look to their right and see that we've invaded the two countries on each side of them. I happen to think with justification with regard to Afghanistan, but with regard to Iraq, not so. But they're incredibly nervous, and they hear the rumblings from here of people thinking somehow it would be a bright idea to do that. It would not be a very smart idea for us to try to have that kind of confrontation with Iran, and our capacity to do something like that, and the implications of it are enormous, much greater than Iraq. There are many other alternatives to taking that approach. So I can't comment on the intelligence that I've heard on this issue. I don't even know exactly where this is at. Obviously, the administration doesn't tell us what we'd like to know about some of these things, but given their track record, obviously there's reason to be concerned, even though it seems almost insane to think about taking this kind of action. Doe Carey, followed by Margaret Skinner.
Well, first I want to say thank you for being my senator. I didn't come prepared to speak, although there's so many issues, how can you narrow it down to one? But so I'm going to relinquish my time to somebody else who has something prepared to say.
Well, I'm glad you're
you.
here. Thank you very much. Margaret Skinner, followed by Stephen Leonard.
As in past years, I would like to urge your support for increased U.S. contributions to the Millennium Development Goals established by the United Nations member states in 2000. In particular, I would urge you to commit to expanding and supporting mandatory funding for the McGovern-Dole International Food for Education and Child Nutrition Program in the 2007 Farm Bill. This program fights hunger and promotes education in the world's poorest countries, and if expanded, could potentially feed more than 110 million hungry school children around the globe. It is one of the best ways, in my view, of promoting peace and restoring American goodwill around the world, goodwill squandered by the dangerously arrogant policies of the current Bush administration. By providing an incentive to keep children in school, it can help prevent child slavery in failed states such as Haiti. Which brings me to my second point and a question. Since the untimely death of your Senate colleague Paul Wellstone and the passage of the anti-trafficking legislation in the waning days of the Clinton administration, who in the Senate has taken up the issue of modern-day slavery?
I'm not certain, but I believe Senator Brownback of Kansas. But let me
I would urge you to be
find out
that
for you.
person.
Well,
Slavery is an issue very
That's
close.
a very serious issue, but if I can get a conservative Republican to take a lead on something like that and help them, that's better than me leading everything.
Well,
I want to engage these folks in...
I think it's a bipartisan
Oh, it would be
issue
bipartisan.
and
Yeah,
an
absolutely.
American issue.
But
And
let me see if I'm right about that. I'm almost certain he's taken up some of that, and I think I have been involved with some of his efforts, but I've got to check exactly what he's done.
I'd
And I
like to
do, of course,
provide you
support
some.
McGovern Dole.
I'd like to provide you with some ammunition if you take up the struggle in the form of a forthcoming book by our son, who has been investigating modern-day slavery
right.
and contends that there are more slaves today than at any time in history. To provide his book, which is due out in March, but this is
Make
an
sure I get a
advance-
copy of it, and I have run into this issue, of course, in parts of Africa and as well as other parts. Thank you, and thank you for bringing this issue up. Stephen Leonard, followed by Steve Biederman.
Senator, you've addressed the issues that I was going to bring up, and I appreciate that. And I also just wanted to mention, thank you for addressing the individual counties. I appreciate your time and attention to the state.
Thank you. Steve Biederman, and then Sharon Gaskell.
Senator Feingold, my name is Steve Biederman. I'm a Lieutenant Commander, United States Navy, retired, served this country for 20 years. I'm a graduate of the Army Command General Staff College and served with General Schwarzkopf, Admiral Borda, and General Shalikashvili. General Shali I served with in Desert Storm and in Provide Comfort. I'm also a member of your Academy Selection Board and have been for the last 10 years. The Vets for Freedom Group, which I am one of the 7,000 members, is a nonpartisan organization established by combat veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Our mission is to educate the American public about the importance of achieving success in these conflicts by applying our firsthand knowledge to issues of American strategy and tactics, namely the surge in Iraq. We support policymakers from both sides of the aisle who have stood behind our great generation of American warriors on the battlefield and who have put long-term national security before short-term partisan political gain. Vets for Freedom recently went to Washington to talk to our senators and representatives. At our dinner, both congressional speakers were Democrats and fully support our stand. While there, I also got to visit an old shipmate of mine, Joe Sestak. He's a retired Vice Admiral, United States Navy, and he is presently the Democratic congressman from Pennsylvania's 7th District. Joe believes, as I do, that we need to withdraw, but he also understands that a quick withdrawal would be a disaster. All of us who serve detest wars and do not want this one to linger on, but we cannot leave until the job is done. This mission needs to be accomplished for the freedom I and many others have fought to preserve. Now, what about the folks that are dying over there? The DoD published statistics on the annual fatalities of military members of the United States Armed Forces from 1980 through 2006. I have the figures for each year, but have averaged them out to see if there is a trend. From 1980 to 1989, the average per year was 2,123. From 1990 to 1999, it was 1,133. And during the past 7 years, it was 1,115. These figures seem to show me that it was more dangerous for me to have served during the decade of the 80s than it is now. My question then is why your stance on the war on terror is so drastically different from those of us who have actually served over there. Oh, and the gold star on my collar, I didn't get that from my service. I got that from my son's service.
Well, sir, first and most importantly, thank you for your service to our country. You and I do see this differently. But my focus is and will continue to be my judgment about the best way to defeat those that attacked us on 9/11. In my view, it was foolhardy to go into Iraq. It was, in my view, one of the worst decisions and biggest mistakes ever made, not by the military, they're just doing their job, but by the people who were elected to make the right calls. They made the wrong call. It has weakened America, it has weakened our military, and it has helped make it much more difficult for us to prevail in Afghanistan, which, of course, between Afghanistan and Pakistan is where the attack came from. So our disagreement is more about strategy and tactics. I think I'm right about this. I've studied it extremely closely. You have a right to your view. I can tell you, you wouldn't believe the hundreds of military people that have come to me, including the parents standing next to the coffins of their kids, who have said, Senator Feingold, you were right about this. I'm telling my staff members, this thing in Iraq does not fit in well with our national security goals, even though the service of our troops is, of course, honorable.
And I agree that getting into the war was wrong. And if you had asked me in January of this year what my opinion was, I'd say, get them out of there. But what we've got going now, the policies that we've got going now, have changed the way things are happening. We are fighting now with Iraqis, Sunnis, shoulder to shoulder with our servicemen. And recently, a group was given a task of taking over a building. There were 261 IEDs around that building where Al-Qaeda was. You know how many went off? None. Because everybody in the neighborhood is providing the intelligence that we need to accomplish the mission of getting the insurgents and Al-Qaeda out of Iraq so that the Iraqis can form their government and get on with their lives.
And that's a view that many people believe and have taken. I'm giving you a little more time here because of the importance of giving somebody with a different view some opportunity to speak. I don't buy the analysis of what's happening in Iraq as being nearly as rosy as the administration puts out. They rely primarily on Al Anbar province, which is 100% Sunni. There's no Shia there. And although you make a point about how some of the sheiks and so on are helping there, this is not something that is easily transferable to the parts of the country where the Shia and the Sunni are having such difficulty getting along. But again, thank you for your help on our committees and for your service to our country. Sharon Gaskell, followed by Lynn Pauley.
I came today to express my outrage. I sit at home and my husband and I feel beyond outrage, beyond frustration on just about every level of issues that are going on now. You know, education, the environment, protection of our natural heritage, energy policies, international affairs, immigration, you name it. We're sort of beside ourselves with what this administration has done. Largely, the feeling that lost opportunities have welled up in these years of this Republican administration. Everything's been going the wrong way when everything could have been going the right way. These years have lost the chance to move forward as leadership on international environmental issues, which even the naysayers are now coming to realize will be so critical. And because there is no one issue, a large number of us sit at home twiddling our thumbs thinking, where do we put our rage? Where do we put our energy? And what it does is essentially bring about enormous poor mental health all across America. And
Doesn't
I think
help.
probably a lot of people feel that with
I think that's right. I think people are very fit to be tied all over this country about this.
And thank you for staying a little bit longer to hear more people.
Well, on the sort of psychological aspect of this, what I'm starting to preach now is the fact that we will have a different president in a few months. Okay? Somehow we have to become psychologically ready to think about a more positive environment. Now, after 9/11, there was a year there before this Iraq debacle when I felt people were pulling together. Now, I know some monkey business was going on behind the scenes by this administration, which we discovered later, but basically, I saw Republicans and Democrats and people all over this country pulling together. We can get back to that. It has been an awful few years. But we can get back to that. And we got to give that new president a chance, whoever it is. And we have to forge a new relationship with a new president. Of course, the price has to be that he or she fixes a lot of this stuff and repairs the damage. But I think somehow we're going to have to get out of this, and it's a little too early to get out of it, because we still got to stop this guy from doing more stuff. Yeah. But we also have to prepare for a positive opportunity, should it arise. Otherwise, we're going to lose a lot of valuable time just feeling like nothing's going to change. I think with a different president and this Congress, frankly, good things could happen. We obviously have to get that new president. So hang in there. You've been a friend for a long time. I feel like you do a lot, too. So Lynn Pauley, followed by Annalise Emerson.
Well, speaking of monkey business, my concern is this. On September 7th of this year, 393 members of Parliament signed a written declaration which is needed to trigger the adaptation to end all primate testing in Europe. This is a total ban on the use of great apes, on chimpanzees, on bonobos, on orangutans, on gorillas, and the use of all wild-caught primates, and the use, and as well as the phase-out of all primates in European laboratories. So while Europe is taking this progressive lead in phasing out the use of primates in labs, the U.S. is joined by other third world countries in expanding the use of, expanding their primate centers, expanding the numbers of primates that are used in laboratories. All of the 8 National Institutes of Health primate research centers are expanding. Here in Wisconsin, they're trying to double their holding of primates. While members of Parliament from France and Germany and Sweden and Portugal and Slovenia, along with others, have evolved their thinking to realize that the time has come to put an end to this. We are in the dark ages about that. I'm a primate, and I'm speaking for all the other primates who can't speak for themselves, not because they're not intelligent and not because they're not sensitive, but only because they don't have the vocal cords to talk.
Thank you, Lynn. I am very torn on this issue, to be honest with you, because of the research elements, but I also am very affected by some of the things you say. So if you have some more materials that you'd like to give me for me to read, I will try to do that.
Thank you.
Annalise Emerson, followed by Jillian Pussy.
Hi, I'm Annalisa Emerson, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about the monkey business. I've spoken to you and written to you several times since 2004, when I became aware of what was happening at the UW Research and also at Covance. And I've discovered how many researchers and scientists and concerned citizens there are speaking up against this unreliable and unnecessary testing. For too long, we've been told that without animal research, there will be no cures for human diseases. But animals don't get human diseases. The animals in the research labs are artificially induced. They have these symptoms induced into them. We live in the 21st century with highly technological and human-based, non-invasive technology available. Science is down to a molecular and genetic level where twins in the same family can react differently to the same medicine. I myself am involved in 2 Alzheimer's studies. My mother has had Alzheimer's for 8 years, and I'm involved in epidemiology studies up at the University of Wisconsin, where they can get more information from me, from my blood, that can be tested and shared with other researchers. And I know, and also there's so much more information, Senator Feingold. I'd like you to urge the FDA to end mandatory animal testing. The FDA statistics even show that 92% of all of the drugs testing, 92% of drugs tested as safe and effective in animals fail when they're tested on humans. Of the remaining 8% of the drugs that reach the public, more than half are relabeled or withdrawn because of serious toxic effects that were not predicted by animal experiments.
All right, I'm going
I'd like to go on, but
conclude. This is a good way to keep me thinking about this, and I
Yes,
will look at
I
your
have
material.
lots of material that I've gathered in the
Just
last
give
4
me
years
some.
that I would love to show
Just
you.
give me a manageable amount.
Okay.
Thank you for your work on this.
Thanks.
Jillian Hussey, followed by Jean Hilgers.
Thank you. And I would like to first of all draw your attention, Senator Feingold, to legislation that was passed by the House overwhelmingly last week, sponsored by Representative David Price. A lot of Republicans also were involved. It's being referred to as legislation that would pave the way for contractor accountability and prosecution of the kinds of crimes we've seen committed over the past 4 years by contractors, and in particular Blackwater. And to quote Jeremy Scahill, the very incredibly, I believe, good investigative journalist who wrote Blackwater USA, something quite insidious is at play because the mercenary industry itself is endorsing this legislation. Basically what it would end up doing if it passes and presumably goes to the Senate, it would create a FBI field office opened up in Baghdad, so that actually U.S. personnel that would be sent over there to monitor the activities of 180,000 contractors. And incidentally, according to Jeremy Scahill, there are more of those than there are actually military soldiers. So we've got double what we think there. One other quick thing, and that would be to say, would you please comment, as part of the pursuit of securing peace in the Middle East, the need to secure a regional nuclear-free agreement. This would have to include Iran, every Arab country, and Israel. The alternative clearly is going to become, if Israel, Pakistan, and India have nuclear arms, then why shouldn't we? And I also want to comment as far as peace, and in the world we're talking about feeling unsafe in this country. We have now got a color-coded fear recording here where we can be color-coded as to what we're supposed to fear. I'm much more afraid of the build-up of nuclear arms. And I want to say I became a citizen in 1972, and at that time I was very proud to become a U.S. citizen because of current things such as in Guantanamo, Abu Ghraib, extraordinary rendition.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. I'm way over my time, and I've still got quite a few people.
Okay.
I'm sorry. There's just so much time. Let me just comment on one piece, which is the contracting abuses. We have to have strong legislation in both the Senate and the House that really goes after this. And Senator Jim Webb of Virginia is taking the lead in the Senate on trying to have legislation that would really be something along the lines of what Harry Truman did in going after war profiteering during World War II. It's that kind of effort that needs to be taken. Thank you. Jean Hilgers, followed by Jane Licht.
Jean, I didn't know, I just filled out the thing, I didn't know.
All right. Thank you for being here. Jane Licht, followed by Norman Moore. How you been, Jane?
Oh, good.
Good to see you again.
I'm now retired, it's
I know.
wonderful.
It's good to see you. We started off together sort of in politics.
Yes, I've been supporting you since you were a freshman senator in the state, yes. Well, there's so many things to talk about, and I really appreciate hearing all of the interesting comments that have been made. I wrote down health care. My daughter married a Kiwi. They lived in New Zealand for 5 years. They had their first child there. In New Zealand, they are a civilized nation, and they feel that health care is a right. They take excellent care of the mother, prenatal, postnatal, the baby. It's all taken care of by the government of New Zealand. And health care there, of course, is not perfect, but their system is just so far better than ours. Now they're living in the United States, and in fact in Madison, and I'm just delighted about that. But her husband got a fairly good job, but it wasn't enough to pay for health care. So, there are so many people without health care, and it's just a real tremendous issue,
Thank
and
you,
I know you're aware of it.
This
so
is
thank you.
the top issue typically. It's a little surprising to have a listening session like this where it doesn't come up as much. I know people are very concerned about international issues in the Bush administration, but I think there is a real groundswell in the country. I'm even noticing it now in the Congress, a feeling that something fundamental has to change and that it does involve universal health care for all Americans. So the pressure should stay on because I'm starting to see this iceberg moving a little bit, and I'm hopeful. Norman Moore, followed by Nathaniel Moore.
Hello, Senator Feingold. Thank you for being here. 3, 4, 5 kids of our kids are dying every day. And I very much appreciate your standalone spirit and what you've done and tried to do. And we, good citizens, followed the ideals that we're supposed to do and elected people that are hopefully going to make a change, and it's not happening. What can we do? I know, an immediate withdrawal from Iraq would be horrible, not maybe the best thing.
Nobody's proposing an immediate. People are proposing a rational, orderly withdrawal over the next few months.
Mhm.
Nobody's saying let's withdraw the troops all in 1 week.
Right.
This is a red herring that's thrown out.
Right.
by
My
the
point is, what
administration.
can we do to get our troops home as fast as we can?
Well,
Because I
you
can't.
got to put pressure on these senators and congressmen, especially Democrats, who don't vote for things like the Feingold Reed Amendment that would put that in place.
Will that be enough? Because Nancy Pelosi and all these people, when last November came around, said, okay, we've heard the message. You guys have spoke loud and clear. George Bush said he got
We have
thumped.
to pass binding legislation to cut off the funding in order to make it happen, but we need more votes. And you can help us by trying, when you see some of these folks that, I won't say the names right here, but I get it for you, of people who, really talked a good line during the campaign, but they're not voting with us on this. Now, Senator Harry Reid, the majority leader, has been strong. He signed my bill, Feingold Reed. That is the gold standard. That is the one reported in the newspapers, the strongest legislation in the country. Well, we need more votes. We only got 30 votes. And we need enough to override the president.
And I want to know how to do this. We can write you letters, and we already know your position. Who do we
do both?
We write all the other
Write to me,
senators?
because I don't even get we don't get enough communications in our own office to back up any issue. There's just not as much as you'd think. No, it'd be
So
in
more
an era
letters to you is
in an
good.
era of email, letters, and so on. You can help put pressure on senators in other states.
Okay, thank you very much.
Please do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Nathaniel Moore, followed by Ben Mazel.
Yes, thank you again. What happened to politicians sticking to their convictions, excluding, I would say, you, probably Dennis Kucinich, and formerly Barack Obama? I believe he fell into the partisan politics that is the game. And is there anything that can be done about that system? And then I also would like to hear your comments on the Palestinian-Israeli occupation, why we continue to fund a oppressive regime, one that is putting a cap on the genocide, Darfur refugees. They won't allow any more of them. They put a cap of 500 on them. Why they cut that off, how they committed war crimes against Lebanon, how they committed war crimes against other countries, yet we continue to fund them. Just why do we continue to fund?
Well, first of all, I think politicians are brought up by consultants and others to think that if you take a strong or a lonely stand, that you'll get clobbered. And it's just the opposite. People generally really kind of find that refreshing. And I think there will be an era of American politics, because I see this every time. Anybody that's sort of straight on and lives to see the next day, people kind of like, and they want more of that. So I think we can get that. Now, on the other issue, I'll be straight with you. I think you're taking a one-sided view with regard to Israel. Israel has its faults.
Yes.
But the notion that somehow Israel is just an occupying country and there's no other, and that no blame is on the other side, doesn't get us where we got to go.
I believe there is blame on the Palestinian side for the
That's where we
terrorist
got to
acts.
start. We got to start with trying to get a Palestinian state that is fundamental.
Would it be a two-state solution or a three-state solution now?
I assume be a
With the
Palestinian
Hamas and
state.
Fatah,
Well,
how they're
I think
separate.
it would be better if they were together, if it can be done. I mean, that's up to the Palestinian people. It's not up to me. I didn't vote for this Biden resolution that said let's carve Iraq into 3 parts. I don't think that's my job. I think that's up to the Palestinian people. If they want to have 2 different areas, that's their business. But my guess is they'll be stronger and have a better country and a better relationship with Israel, Lebanon, Egypt, and the others if they are united as a people. But, I would just urge you to try to look at this as something where we need to kind of move forward and recognize there are problems on both sides and try to resolve the problem positively. I think Ehud Olmert and Mahmoud Abbas are decent people who would like to solve this problem.
But
They are the leaders
Hamas
of those
was the
2 countries.
democratically elected government, and since they did not agree with what
It's a serious
Israel or
problem.
America went with,
It's a
they
serious
were,
problem because it was a democratic election where Hamas won. So it's very complicated. But if there is a way to get some of these things resolved, I don't know if you saw today in the paper, Palestinian offered giving up some of the West Bank for some Israeli territory, that might make more sense. These kind of talks have never happened before. I think this is a time to be more positive. And I know you
I agree
are a
too,
positive
but it's
young
been
person.
about 30, 40 years.
Oh, I
since
know
the
how long
last.
it's been.
So
No, I mean, I think this is, what the Palestinian said, that he said this is a very, very, very important opportunity.
Yes.
This was the Palestinian. So I'm hoping we can take advantage.
All right, thank you.
Good stuff. You seem like a very aware young man. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
And a slightly less young, but still knowledgeable man. Ben, good to see you.
Senator, even before the awful FISA bill that passed this summer, we'd been seeing a steady erosion of our privacy rights, especially with the introduction of new technologies and the law not keeping up. My read is that that is an amnesty for the phone companies that participated in whatever program we can't find out the administration enacted. That time has come to start moving the ball in a forward direction on privacy. I'd suggest offering to trade that amnesty for ongoing enhancements to our privacy. The technology that particularly troubles me is the location tracking that our cell phones, OnStar, and other wireless devices have, where currently that's considered business records and not our personal information. So how about trying to trade off somewhere to get in legal protections for the history of where we are?
I think that's a very thoughtful suggestion. Very interesting. I'd like some background on that, because I think that is the notion that that's just some casual information. It does matter to people to be whether they're tracked about where they are.
The tracking
in terms of
was
freedom of travel.
enacted in the Clinton-era emergency 911 laws that said they had to know where you are when you called for help.
I will.
But there was no protection.
I'm going to study this a little bit, because I think that's an interesting angle on this thing. Randy Henderson, followed by Russell Nofko. Henderson? Okay. All right, Randy.
Sorry to hold you up there.
Well, I didn't call your name. It's my fault.
Okay. Senator, thanks for being here. I wanted to kind of piggyback on something that the other gentleman had said on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. And that was, I do agree that it's a very complicated issue. And I think that sometimes with complicated issues, we do say, well, we have world leaders dealing with these problems, or it's up to the Palestinian people, or it's up to the Israeli government, whatever it might be. My frustration is that I don't hear from our national leaders an affirmation of the growing peace movements that are in Israel itself. Women in Black, mothers who are against the Israeli occupation, some of the other organizations in the United States that represent Palestinian refugees. And I wanted to just make the comment that according to international law and according to some of the other treaties that we've made, it really is illegal for us to be funding Israel in the way that we are. And I wanted
Well,
to
I think
comment
those
on
peace
that.
movements actually have had a strong impact on some of the things that the Israeli government is willing to do. I think they're having an enormous impact. I do know numbers of the individuals that are involved, both here and in Israel. And I do think that they are having sort of a waking up the Israeli public and government to the reality that it is essential that they move forward with a peace agreement and a Palestinian state sooner rather than later, for Israel's own sake.
Yeah.
But I do think I will acknowledge those publicly here as a positive force.
Thank you.
You bet. Russell, followed by Julie Loeffler.
Senator Feingold, I thank you for coming here today, and what I wanted to talk about is that I saw the Michael Moore movie Sicko, and the other countries like Canada and France, it has universal health care, and because I feel that it's the right thing, more affordable health care, and John Edwards says if he's elected president that he's going to get rid of the Bush tax breaks to fund universal health care, and I was wondering where you'd stand on it.
I strongly support universal health care for all Americans. I think if we had a system where the states were allowed some flexibility in exactly how they did it, as long as they all had to do it, and it was all at a level like members of Congress get, you know, that would maybe allow some of these state initiatives to get funded in part by the federal government, but nobody can fall through the cracks. That would be the requirement. If I could wave a magic wand and have single-payer system tomorrow, I'd do it. But I'm thinking maybe one that has some sensitivity to differences between the states without compromising universal coverage. Maybe, Paul Wellstone was talking about that just before he died. He had come to the conclusion that maybe not state-based health care, but allowing a federal law where the states have some ability to have some variation in exactly how they do it would be a good thing. Thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Feingold.
Good to see you. Julie, followed by Stacy Sanders.
Hi, Senator Feingold. Thanks for being here today. I'm here on behalf of, and at the request of, my 15-year-old daughter. She's a sophomore at Middleton High School. In her 10th grade social studies class, they are currently studying the Constitution. She came home last week and told me that 2 statements by fellow classmates in that class really bothered her. The first was that another student said that she could not understand the importance of studying the Constitution because it was just a piece of paper. The second statement was that another student expressed was the opinion that it was unconstitutional for anyone to question the president's actions in time of war. My daughter was aghast. She thought that the teacher gave a very inadequate explanation of the importance of the Constitution and the constitutional rights and duties of citizens and legislatures. In response to those 2 students' remarks, Senator Feingold, my question for you is this, as one parent to another, and it's a very localized question. You used to visit your daughter's Middleton elementary schools. Would you be willing to visit my daughters and the sons and daughters of many people in this room, visit the high school your children attended to present a very convincing response and rebuttal to these remarks? I ask this of you because I believe it is important to educate young scholars about the importance of the Constitution to our government and to our way of life as Americans. Because I know you from working with you when I used to be a legislative attorney at the Legislative Reference Bureau, and you were a state senator, and I know your love of the Constitution. And because I believe that kids might listen to a well-respected senator more than a teacher. I thank you.
I will come over to some setting in the high school. We'll have to talk about exactly what kind of a gathering it would be, the smaller one or a larger, whatever it be. I'm going to buy your daughter a bound little copy of the Constitution. I'm going to sign
Oh,
it.
it's all right. She's already got one.
No, I'm going to give you one that says, where I sign it saying, defend this document, which is what because I'm proud of whoever it is, probably Mom, who taught her enough so that she knew to be outraged.
She was outraged.
Well, listen,
and so was I.
It's not so bad that 15-year-olds say that stuff.
Yes.
That's kind of the right age. When I was in 8th grade in Janesville Marshall Junior High School, they brought out the Constitution, and we had these kind of conversations.
I know.
And I kind of got it in 8th grade. You know, I need a little refinement over the years of exactly what, but that is exactly what should be happening. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that conversation went on. Maybe whatever the teacher's response and so on and so forth. But, you know, somebody must have done a good job in your house. So,
well, thank you.
Good for you.
May I speak with your
and I will
scheduler
try to
about
come
it, or
over,
what?
and I do I go every year to Northside School to see the 5th graders.
I know
never
you
fail.
do. I know you
So I
do,
get them
Senator
young.
Feingold.
I start talking about.
Yes, but
they want to know if I have a limo, but I want to talk
apparently
about
some
the
of the students
Constitution.
at Middleton High School didn't go to Northside, and they didn't get your spiel, and
All
so
right,
now.
I'll see if I can get all the way over to Middleton High School one of these days.
How do we do
I can
this?
almost throw a ball that far from where I live.
Because I'd like them to hear you
Okay.
while they're studying the Constitution.
We'll work something out sometime in the next few months.
Okay, I thank you very much.
Okay. Stacy Sanders. Followed by Bob Paiva.
Thank you, Senator, for being here. And I really respect you for living up to your promise to keep in touch with the people. And I commend you for your integrity in that area. And thanks for staying late. You've demonstrated your dedication to creating a culture of fairness, justice, and life by striving to put an end to the federal death penalty. And you said that, quote, executing the innocent is unacceptable, unquote. I come to you today to respectfully challenge you to apply this same truth to all human life, especially life at its earliest stages. Until we protect the lives of the unborn, who are our most vulnerable, defenseless, and innocent victims of violence. Nothing else we do as a nation really matters. Thanks, Sheila. You are in an incredible position of power and influence, and I beg you to exercise that power and influence to protect all life, from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death. Thank you.
Well, of course, I respect that view and hear it often in the state. I take a different view. I firmly believe that a woman who is pregnant is the person that makes the decisions relating to that, and I believe that is a fundamental human right of a woman. And I believe differently than you with regard to when the issue you talk about becomes relevant. It's a very difficult issue, but I really think when you start telling women what they can do with their pregnancies, you're stepping over the line into a government control of women that is inappropriate and I think unconstitutional. But we respectfully disagree. But thank you for having the guts to say this in Dane County. That's no small thing. You're not a scared person. Good for you. Bob Paiva, and the last one, or no, not the last one. Yeah, and then the last one will be Dan, is it Gensler? Geisler.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, Bob.
I'm a retired Air Force military retiree. I've been to a lot of war zones that we haven't really wanted to be, from Vietnam era all the way up. One of the things I was going to ask you what your feelings on is when a person is disabled through military service before they have 20 years and they receive a military disabled payment. And if a person serves 20 years or are 20 years and over and gets disabled, they are only given their military retirement. There's been lots of legislation in the last 20 years to have concurrent payment of disability and retirement for those who've been injured in war zones or have been injured in working on aircraft or not necessarily people shooting at them. And I'd like to know what your feeling is on supporting that legislation.
Is this the concurrent receipts issue?
Pardon me?
So is this the same as the concurrent receipts issue?
Yeah, it's a concurrent
I've been
receipts.
a strong supporter of fixing that. We did a fair amount of it already, but there's more that needs to be done. I want to have my staff help me clarify what yet needs to be done. Senator Harry Reid helped us get the first chunk of that, but we do have to finish the job, and I do support you on that.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Last one is Dan, then I got to head out. Got to go all the way to Middleton.
Senator, I want to thank you for your support of the part of the Farm Bill that funds the food stamp program. That's very important for low-income people, and there are deficiencies with it now, excessive regulations and not enough money for everybody. You've written a letter to my wife. She's written to you on that, and you have said you have written letters, and I read on your website that you do support improvements in the food stamp program. I thank you for that.
I do. It really does need to be brought up to speed. It's fallen into some areas of being not up to date, and we do need to do that.
I have one other point on the Farm Bill, and that is that I understand that much of the commodity payments go to a relatively small number of really big farms, industrialized farms. Why can't we reduce the amount of money that goes to the big farms and use the money saved for food stamps and other programs?
This is exactly what Senator Harkin of Iowa has done with some success in the past, and he's going to try to broaden that in the Farm Bill. And I'm one of his supporters as we try to do that.
Very good.
Some of this stuff goes to people that really don't need it and is inappropriate.
So would you support a limit on what they can get? Say,
well, yeah, we have it in some areas already, and I would support other limits.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. This has been a very, very impressive range of issues, and people, of course, are always in Dane County. By the end, I'm pretty tired. But thank you so much for coming.